alongside your maths or whatever should be, how do I pay for the mortgage? How do I make sure I've got a pension? No one knew how to save the money. No one knew what to do. No one knew how to make that money make money. No one even understood really about their contracts and what their contracts meant. Venues in particular are under attack. Taxes being dropped during COVID and then being put back up. But put back up when the business of the venue has not reached where it was. We have got the mechanism and the means to fix things. Luckily for me, I'm part of that fight. Every time a song gets played out at a restaurant, an artist has a potential to earn from that as well. Brand deals now have become a big thing. Probably Dr. Dre has made more from his headphones than he has his music. And he said, look, I really wanted you to meet Alicia Keys. I just really did, because I really thought it'd be really good for you guys to maybe be working with her. And I said, Alicia Keys? He said, yeah. I said, oh, nice name. Didn't think anything more of it until a year later.
You're listening to Better Financial Futures. I'm your host, John Boatman. After 3 decades in financial advice, I've seen how small, informed decisions can transform someone's life. This podcast is my way of sharing that experience so that even one listener can take a step towards a better financial future. I'm super pleased to introduce a really good friend of mine, somebody I went to school with, someone I've known a long time, but someone that is in a completely different industry to me. And my friend Kwame Kwaten, you're on the line, sir. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine.
Fantastic. So for our audience, tell us a little bit more about you personally and professionally.
Okay, I am a music person, basically. So I'm all things music industry and music business. So I have a publishing company, label services company, which we put records out through. I have a management company. I also am co-director of Creating Vision. And Creating Vision, the easiest way to explain it is music business education. All of our events are free. But somehow it manages to feed back into the record label system and create wins. So something we're very proud of, but yeah, it works. It's as I call it, it's like a social enterprise company. That's the best way of putting it, but it's not for profit. So yeah, that satisfies my soul. To add to all of my other things, I'm also a Brits trustee, and I'm also a Mobos trustee.
And you're married with children, adult
I
children.
am. I'm married with children. I have 2 gorgeous, I can't call them kids, but we will always call them kids.
What did you learn about financial education or money when you were young at school?
Nothing.
And does that concern you?
Well, now it does, because you don't even learn how to really think about it. It's something that should be in schools and should be like A1. It should be right up there. But I think that in the UK, sometimes it's almost something that people are embarrassed about. Alongside your maths or whatever should be, how do I pay for the mortgage? How do I make sure I've got a pension? What type of pension am I going for? How do I learn to save properly? All of these things, they should all be included. And to be real, part of the reason that we even started Creating Vision was that what we found was that many a person was, having a hit record, but no one knew how to save the money. No one knew how to save the money. No one knew what to do. No one knew how to make that money make money. No one even understood really about their contracts and what their contracts meant. So inevitably what you'd find is somebody's got a deal and the deal's for £500,000 and they've gone out and bought 2 cars that are going to devalue straight away in price.
And just staying really with yourself as you've grown up, what's your relationship with money been like? Because I imagine as a musician, you were first a musician and then secondary, the money came.
I think it's something that you come to grips with all of your life. I think, trying to understand it. There are lots of different pots of money and they come in all at the same time. Especially with what I do. I consult for a lot of acts. So for acts in Australia, for acts in America, for acts in Canada, for acts in the UK. So I do a lot of consulting for people, but then I have the management company as well. And I just think that because there are many pockets. Because I consult and I produce and I have songs that still earn me money and I have publishing that earns me money and so there are lots of different pockets when it comes to the music business. Lots of different pockets. And it's always about trying to refresh and make sure that nothing slipped through the cracks, because the music industry in particular is brilliant at making a payment that's supposed to go to you fall through the cracks. It's incredible. That whole, hold on, I'm phoning up this record label because you used to be my label. Can we look over royalties? And then go, what do you mean? And you go, well, I've had some records out through you, so you haven't sent me any royalty statements. And the reply will generally, the first reply is, well, we didn't have your address. That's the first reply. And you go, come on, anybody can get hold of me. And they go, well, no one told us your address. So you go, well, so what, you held on to that amount of money for all that time because you didn't have an address, you know? So that's the kind of thing you're dealing with.
It's crazy. So just go back to when you were first in a band and you were playing the keyboards, I believe. Tell us about those times.
One of my first performances was probably at Dingwall's. And I remember Dingwall's in Camden. I remember it feeling really special and really buzzy. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of breaks, I've had lots of breaks. I'm very fortunate. I've had lots of breaks. I've had lots of times where almost the unfathomable has happened.
I want to ask you about one of those stories because I know I'm going to bring this a little bit further forward, and I can see some of those discs behind you, and I recognize one of them being Seal. And I know you've worked with Seal and many big artists, but I want you to just tell the audience about that fantastic story in Hammersmith Tube Station.
I discovered Shola Ama in a tube station, a Hammersmith tube station. She was singing in the tube station. And I just recognized that her voice was a really, really good voice. I followed, as they call it, follow your nose. I just followed my nose, caught up with her on one of the platforms. In fact, there were 3 girls and I didn't know which one it was. And I just said, look, which one of you 3 was singing? Because I hadn't seen her. She was singing, but she was singing behind me. So I hadn't seen her, but I just thought that's a really good voice. And so I just ran down. I went to the wrong platform first. I went to the wrong platform second. I went to the right platform third. And I just saw 3 girls at the end. I ran down and said, which one of you 3? Was any of you 3 singing? And they said, yeah, this one in the middle. So I said to her, look, can you sing another song? So she sang Brandy, I Want to Be Down. And then I said, look, and she sang it note perfect. So then I said, okay, can you sing another song? And she sang Sweet Thing, Rufus and Shaka. And I think she was probably referencing the Mary J. Blige version, but it was Rufus and Shaka Khan. And I just remember thinking, she looks really young, but she's singing these songs, and these songs are technically really, really difficult to sing. So I gave her my number. I told her I was in a band called The Influence. At which point she said, "Hold on a second." She said, "Were you guys supporting Michael Jackson?" And I said, "Yeah, we were. We supported him on the Dangerous tour." She said, "I saw you." She said, "I saw you on stage." She said, "So I know you're legit." So it went from there.
And she went on to have, is it a million, easily a million selling record or album, didn't she?
Shola's easily done a million. If you go between singles and albums, easily she's done a million, no problem. You Might Need Somebody alone as a song was in the top 10 for 2 months. And again, we were fortunate to be the producers of that track. And, so yeah, good. I mean, look, as I said, I've been very, very fortunate with what I do. Yeah, I work hard, but there's a lot of people that work hard that don't necessarily get the same breaks. So I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah. So, is there any, before I go on to royalty income, I want to ask you about royalty income. Before I go there, is there any tips or advice you give to people in the music industry that really have a dream and they really want to come into that? Because I know it's tough. But is there any advice you give?
I think, there's obvious ones. Listening to your gut's really important. Um, I'm always like, if something feels wrong in your belly, it probably is. you know, don't look past your own intuition. Intuition has saved me many a time. So I would say pay attention to it. Um, I would also say just don't be an idiot. People are not there to be trampled on. People are there, respect them. Even when you make a mistake, even when you make a mistake, be okay and say, look, you know what? I made a mistake and I'm making amends, you know? Also, another thing, a golden rule of the industry is you're never going to be liked by everybody, especially if you've done well. If you've done well, you have to accept that there is a portion of people. Imagine the pie to be 100%. There will be 15% people, maybe 20, that just do not like 1 ounce or bone in your body. And you have to accept that going in. And you have to be all right with that. Because the truth is, it probably means you're doing something right. I know that sounds awful, but yeah. 80% digging what you do is good.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the things I wanted to touch on as well is the fact that the music industry's changed a lot in the last 30 years, isn't it? Different platforms, different ways of getting new music out there. Can you just touch on the different, a lot of artists are actually going for more of a self-publishing type of arrangement?
More artists are putting songs out themselves. More artists are less afraid of being the record label. More artists are taking more control. More artists are being okay with being their own publishing company. I think we're at the beginning of a very steep learning curve for a lot of acts that before had almost been um, it had been the normal, regular way that if you wanted to get your music out, there was only one way in which you could get it out. And that was to put it through a record label or to put it through, an independent record label or just, do it in a particular way. Whereas now, I think there's a lot more people that understand that if you can keep hold, A, of your masters and B, of your head, generally, as long as you're talented, very important, you'll be okay, and it's okay. You don't have to immediately, run towards a deal. You can take your time, build up your stock, as it were, reach a point where people are really interested in you, and then do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you also about venues as well, because a lot of, when you're starting out, you're looking for those smaller venues. Is that an area that's being challenged and a bit of a struggle?
Well, definitely, we've hit a point with smaller venues where, I mean, it wasn't so long ago that we were losing two a week. I think a combination of COVID, taxes being put on venues, taxes being dropped during COVID and then being put back up, but put back up when the business of the venue has not reached where it was. I think there's that. And also there's the other thing, and that's that COVID has affected things in another way, and that's that, our generation, when we went to a place, we drank. The new generation, because they had kind of 2, 3 years sort of out in, you know, the wilderness almost with COVID, they're like, well, they haven't had to go through the kind of societal almost breaking in of a drinker. Do you know what I mean? So they're just like, actually, I don't particularly like that drink. So they don't drink as much. It's not essential to their existences, which for some people is a good thing. But for pubs and for clubs, it's a hard thing. But as these sometimes are challenges for places to evolve. So that's another thing as well. But yeah, venues in particular are under attack. The UK and the UK government, I think, as a whole, we've got some great initiatives happening. Music Venues Trust, in particular, are doing some amazing work, as well as the MMF are doing amazing work with regards to venues. And Music Venues Trust have launched this £1 levy scheme, which sees big artists that go into big arena concerts actually give £1 off of each ticket to a fund that then funds that smaller venues can then apply to. I mean, that kind of stuff, which is really good, clever thinking, should have been going on 10 years ago. But, here we are, eh? So, but look, ultimately, we have got the mechanism and the means to fix things. Luckily for me, I'm part of that fight.
No, that's brilliant work, and that's really love that and love what that's doing. I was actually at a Coldplay concert last year, and they brought up on the screen some of the ticket money was going into that initiative. So, um, thank you to Coldplay, and thank you to all the other artists as well. I did want to spend a bit of time talking to you about royalty income, and maybe you could explain that because people do understand royalty income from maybe an author or a songwriter, but can you explain really how that works? And you touched a little bit on royalty income earlier, and maybe musicians not getting the royalty income, but generally, how does royalty income work, and what kind of levels of nowadays streaming and downloads would someone need to have before they earn some decent money from royalties?
If you are putting out your own record, you roughly should be working around the kind of, to be on the safe side, every million streams is generating about between three to sort of 4,000. And to even be safer, just say dollars, $3,000 to $4,000. That's to me a kind of good way of looking at it. I'm only doing it rough. Believe you me, everything I'm saying here is fact packet because there are lots of different deciding factors within that. Okay. But to go into them would be too long. Okay. So, but so the thing is, if you look at a creator, an artist, and they've got, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 100 million streams, then you can kind of do the maths. If you kind of go, well, hold on, 1 million is between 3 and 4,000, then just times it by whatever the amount is, and you'll end up with how much they've made. But that is if they own their master. If they don't own their master, for instance, if they're going through a major record label or an indie, they could be losing maybe half of it, or they could be losing 70% of it, because they're signed through that. But the flip side of that is that the record label in the beginning would have put up an advance of maybe, I don't know, 100, 200,000 that they have to get back first before the artist can start earning. So already, just in my brief, calm explanation, you see that there are several pockets. And by the way, that's just kind of streaming. If I go out of that and I go into publishing, well, every time a song gets played on radio, then an artist has the potential to earn from that. Every time a song gets played out at a restaurant, an artist has a potential to earn from that as well. Brand deals now have become a big thing, so you've only got to look at the fact that probably Dr. Dre has made more from his headphones than he has his music, probably, so there are a lot of things that go with that. But yeah, it's a multi-layered cake, and it's very important that as an artist you come to grips with understanding that.
I think the other thing that just came to mind as you were speaking was the fact that people don't necessarily go into the music business for royalty income. Would you agree?
No, it's not your first port of call. Your first port of call is not necessarily, I want to. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some people that are strictly about the money. They're just like, this is great, but it's the cash that I'm after. More than not, it depends on what type of creative you are, but I think a lot of the time, that's not you're in it to make really, really good records. At first is where you are. You want to make really good records. But then the sidebar is that you realize that in order to be able to have the creative freedom to make those records, you need money every week coming into your account so that you can pay bills and feel not worried or threatened enough to make some great music. Because if you're going to make really, a lot of the greatest records in the world were made in places that have been built either by the artist. If you look at Prince or Michael Jackson, Prince had Paisley Park. Michael Jackson had a studio in Hollywood built especially for the making of Thriller. Do you know what I mean? So if you're making like really, really, truly great stuff, you need all the kind of attributes. But then sometimes, look, you could be Bon Iver and just need a shed in the woods that's giving you enough time to make an amazing record for Emma. Make an amazing.
One of the other things that's happening, I believe, is back catalogue.
Back catalog has become a real thing. I'm involved in a couple of sales at the moment. It's become a real thing. There's artists who have got, who own a royalty share, selling that royalty share to another company has become a really big thing. I think a lot of what's happened is a lot of venture capitalists have realized that actually, far from the kind of talk that they used to hear on roadside, that music, you don't make any money, they've now realized that actually, yeah, you can, and you can make a really, really steady income musically. Not to say that that's everybody. It isn't. A vast majority of musicians have real trouble just making their yearly sort of salaries from music work at all, so that can be really, really tough. But and it generally is when you are a smaller act. If you're a bigger act though, yeah, it's ain't it always the way though. When you're a bigger act and maybe you don't need the money, that's when everybody's throwing loads of money at you. When you're a smaller act and you need just someone to kind of believe in you a bit, and generally when it's a kind of tumbleweed desert, you know.
So it's absolutely fascinating. I love talking to you about the music industry because it's so different to financial services, but it has got a link. And we're talking about better financial futures and way people generate their income to live their life. Money's not the most important thing in the world, but it allows you to do the things that are important and things you want to do. So I love what you've shared with us. I'm going to ask you one more question, and I did pre-warn you about it, but what's your biggest financial mistake you've made so far in your life?
A musical financial mistake was I I didn't realize it at the time, but an A&R man had phoned me up and said to me, he said, listen, I really want you to meet this new artist that I've got. I said, look, we're really busy at the moment. We're doing some remixes for some. And he said, but Kwame, please, you've got to come to this show. And I was like, I said, look, okay. And I said, but, just, he said, I'll tell you what, he said, I'll send you the tickets. Come. He had the tickets biked to us. And, they came through the door and we just, put them on the shelf and just got on with our mixes, stuff that we had to do. And alas, he called us a couple of days later. He said, you didn't go. I said, look, I'm sorry, I just couldn't. We were really busy. And he said, look, I really wanted you to meet Alicia Keys. I just really did, because I really thought it'd be really good for you guys to maybe be working with her. And I said, Alicia Keys? He said, yeah. I said, oh, nice name. Didn't think anything more of it until a year later. That's one little mistake, one little error. I think financial mistake, personally, I think that I remember a time where we had bought we bought a house and we were sharing the house, but a lot of money was being made. A lot of money had come in for us doing productions, blah, this, that, whatever. I remember at the time thinking, we should probably buy another place and rent it out. Probably get another. And I remember thinking that. And at the time, obviously, you could, because back then, the banks were just like, here, and I didn't. And I remember one lesson that I realized is that money in an account, and lots of it, doesn't necessarily, it, it can just go, and it can go on the smallest of things, Suddenly 1 minute it's there and the next minute it's not. 2 years and you're like, hold on, where did that money go? So the lesson is definitely get something, For instance, here I am, I'm on our boat at the moment, and we got some money, bought the boat. Smart move.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's good to see your smiling face.
All right.
Thank you, my friend.
Look after yourself.